Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andre and I'm your bookworm, and today we are back on book reviews, as you can see by this little book here, and we are reviewing a science fiction book, a really good book, and it's called The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. Alright, for the ones that don't know, The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin is a classic of science fiction. It is acclaimed as one of the must-reads of science fiction, and that is one of the reasons why I read this book, because it is so acclaimed. But if you don't know, this is a standalone. It is part of a series, but it's a series where every single book is a standalone. The series is called the Hainish Cycle, and there are other books. There are several books in the series. One of them I have read, but I have not reviewed here on the channel. That book is The Dispossessed. I love that book, so I was really keen to read more in this cycle or series, even though I've read more of Ursula K. Le Guin's books, but not this one, so very keen. Several reasons, you get the drill. This book was initially published in 1969, so a very long time ago. It is a very short book, almost looks like a short story, because this edition has a bit more than 200 pages, something like that. So as you can see, very short, but that's typical for the books at the time. When this book was released, it won a lot of awards like the Hugo, the Nebula, and even won a Margaret A. Edwards Award in 2004, which is a lot after this book was published, which just shows how big and how influential this book is and was and probably will be for a long time. On Goodreads, this book has very close to 230,000 ratings. It's just short like 34 people to read it and rate it, and the average score it has is a 4.09 out of 5. Now, for science fiction, we have established already this is a good score, because anything above 4 for science fiction is good. So this bodes well for our review, and besides that, from what I've been saying already, I bet you can guess that I enjoyed this book. But we'll get into the actual review. Let's just go through the first housekeeping item, and the only housekeeping item today, which will be reading the synopsis for this book. If you don't want to hear anything because you're allergic to spoilers, you want your mind to go pristine into this book, then you can just skip to the next timestamp. Otherwise, I'll just start narrating and we'll get onto it. The groundbreaking work of science fiction, The Left Hand of Darkness, tells the story of a lone human emissary's mission to Winter, an unknown alien world whose inhabitants can choose and change their gender. His goal is to facilitate Winter's inclusion in a growing intergalactic civilization, but to do so he must bridge the gulf between his own views and those of the completely dissimilar culture that he encounters. Exploring questions of psychology, society, and human emotion in an alien world, The Left Hand of Darkness stands as a landmark achievement in the annals of science fiction. Alright, with the synopsis out of the way, it is a short synopsis just like this book. We can move on to this categories of this video, which the first one is plot. Well, to start, and this is kind of going to be a recurring theme across this review, we cannot have overly complex things in a book that is so short. If we did, it would result in a lot of confusion, and that wouldn't be good. But in this case, that is not the case. We have a very simple plot. We have this human emissary arriving to this planet, wanting the people, the aliens in this world, to join an intergalactic civilization kind of, or alliance, and it's just him trying to understand these aliens trying to understand this human, and those interactions. It's quite simple. We do have some stakes being elevated across the book. We do have some plot twists that might not be the most mind-blowing you'll ever read. However, they will be good for the type of story that there is. And besides, I don't think Ursula K. Le Guin wrote this book taking the plot as the main thing that she wanted to do. I think this book is very regulated by world building, by the writing style, the themes across it, and the plot is just a small tool that she uses to get those big categories across and to get those categories really delivered in the way she wanted to the reader. If I had to criticize something, would be that I wish the book were a bit longer, and that would allow us to have a bit more complexity to this plot, because I did think that at the start it was being very simple, and even towards the end the resolve of it all was quite simple, even though it was written well. So I think there was just that small nitpicky part that I wish that the plot could have been a bit more complex or a bit bigger in the scale, because I mean, this book, it has a lot of good stuff, so I just wanted it to have a tiny bit more. But as it stands, I think this category, I'm gonna give it a 4+ out of 5. It is really good. It's just not yet to the 5, just missed it. Alright, moving on to characters. Like I said before, this is a short book, so there aren't a bajillion different characters, which is good because you don't want that. We have our main protagonist, which is the emissary, and then we have a couple aliens that we connect with, that we interact, to show some of those differences and those perspectives from the alien race. Now, none of them is really delved much into. However, there is one that we do. And that one I think is enough for this book for us to connect with the other perspective, meaning to connect with this different alien race that has such complex interactions that are so different to ours. And it allows us to understand. So we are from the point of view of the human, and we understand little by little how they work. And we go from being ignorant and afraid, kind of, to understanding. And at the same time, we do the same thing for the aliens. The aliens look at the humans as these perverts because they always have a gender and they're always ready for having relations. And they see that as weird. And the more you delve into this book, the more you understand them. And I think Ursula K. Le Guin was really good at creating these connections and making this progression through the characters, have the characters develop slowly throughout the story to understand each other and go through their culture and all their history, pretty much. And I think overall, I was not expecting that relationship to get so, not intense, but so well done that I would be so invested into it. Because again, I thought this is such a short book. Surely the relationships will never be developed enough for me to invest fully. But I was very wrong. Towards the end, I was fully invested in what was happening between the two characters, and there were a lot of emotions related to it. And that shows how good Ursula K. Le Guin is as a writer, because not a lot of space, and you can fully connect with these characters so well that you feel all these emotions towards the end of the story. So I think it is very clear for me that this category deserves a 5 out of 5, because it's so amazing in such a short space how much was created and how much was developed in terms of characters. Because also, I forgot to say, but none of these characters felt two-dimensional. They had so many facets to it because they felt real. Even though they were aliens, they really felt like they could exist, and I could totally understand where they were coming from whenever they said something that was against the human norm. So that was a really good point. Right, what about world building? I've mentioned already world building as being a really good category for this book, and I agree, it was really well done. There are several moving parts that need to be coordinated really well for this book to work in the way that it does, and I'm going to talk through it all. But first, the planet where the story happens, winter. It is a wintry planet, it's full of snow, and this kind of dictates the population a bit. The way they work around this planet full of snow, like crops and culture, all of these influence quite a lot, which is good because I love when the world itself is able to influence how people behave, because that's how it should be. And then, of course, we have the aliens, which is the diamond in this book. These aliens that are genderless until they choose to mate, and then they can actually change and choose which gender to be. So that in itself is a huge can of worms that you can just delve into and go for pages and pages and pages. However, Ursula K. Le Guin chooses very well just certain points, makes the characterization of the population really well done, while at the same time delving into these themes about gender and gender fluidity, and how would we that are stuck in one gender see and perceive these people, and how do they perceive us, and also so many different aspects of it, like childbearing. If you could have children and you would just need to change genders, how would that change the way you perceive childbearing and taking care of children and all of that? So these type of questions are raised in this book, and this is also very relevant to writing style, but I'm just saying here because this is how the writing style and the world building worked together so well that them together is better than the sum of each part. They synergize to produce a much better outcome. And so, of course, it is more than obvious that this category could not be anything less than a 5 out of 5. All right, moving on to the second last category, which is writing style. And this one we have a lot to talk about. I mean, I think it is very obvious, the main message, which is Ursula K. Le Guin's writing is masterful. She was an amazing writer at creating stories that make you think and that make you push this message to try and think in different ways about the same topic. And even though the plot is a bit simple, you can truly have characters that are fleshed out, you can have a world building that is vivid and rich, and the writing style just connects all of these to create this momentum and drive the story through. In terms of the technicalities, the prose is good, it is descriptive to sufficiency, I would say. There's no lots of big descriptions. You describe the world or the other people in a way that you can understand. You can fill the gaps with your imagination, which I find good. The pacing is also good. Maybe at the start it wasn't the best, maybe it was a bit too slow. However, when that picked up and with the plot twist and then the stakes being elevated, I really enjoyed how the pace turned out, especially towards the end. Now I was just devouring the book as fast as I could. And I mean, the stakes being elevated in this book did not feel cheap, because in a lot of books, when you have the protagonist being in danger, you just assume that the protagonist will survive because they are the protagonist. And if maybe sometimes there's 5 books ahead, you know that they won't die because there's still 5 books. Other times, you know that something magical will happen to save them. And I don't really like when those stakes are elevated very cheaply. However, in this book, Ursula K. Le Guin established the detail that means this protagonist could very well disappear and the story would continue. And that makes the stakes being elevated and feel real, because you know they might die and the story will continue. So that is really great. I really enjoy that. I'm not going to reveal if the protagonist died or not. I'm just going to say that what she did was really good and I really enjoyed it. And of course, we have the themes explored in this book, which is, of course, the gold. Yeah, if the world building is the diamond, the themes are the gold part of this book. And I think them together made this book shine so well and made me think in so many things that I hadn't thought before, or things that I had thought before, but thinking now in a different way, which was really good and I really enjoyed it. And I love when books do that, make me think in different ways or about new things. I don't want to talk about much of the themes because I think since that is the gold part of this book, it needs to be experienced by the readers before you actually talk about them. But I can say that it will change a bit the way you think about things, or at least make you think of a new way. This is a lot of things and thinking, but you get what I mean. It will be different, a different read, and I definitely recommend it. Overall, for this category, I'm going to give a 5 out of 5. And finally, our last category, which is enjoyment. This one was a bit tricky at the start because I had big expectations for this book. It is a classic. I've heard so much about it being a classic, about being it so good, about getting so many awards, that I was like, okay, I'm going to read this. This is going to be great. But at the same time, I was a bit hesitant because science fiction from a long, long time ago tends to be a bit heavy. So when I started reading this, I got that heavy feeling at the start and I was like, oh no, let's hope I like this. And as it kept going, I kept getting more invested into it. And by the end, I was fully invested and I was reading this book quite fast. I mean, you can't really read super fast or do for a long time because the book is so short. So this means that basically in a couple of days, I had finished the book, which is really good for me. So I really enjoyed that and that aspect of it. I would say that my enjoyment might not have been always at a 5, saying that my entertainment wasn't always extreme, but towards the end, for sure, it was at a 5. So on average, I would say that this category would be a 4+ out of 5, but then again, it is a super strong 4+. Just that start, I think it also relates a bit to the plot to be a bit more complex instead of being so simple that kind of distracts from how good this book is, if that makes any sense. So yeah, a 4+ out of 5 will be. And that ends our review. Just as a refresher, we have 4+ for plot, 5 for characters, 5 for world building, 5 for writing style, and 4+ for enjoyment, which gives us a final score of 4.6 out of 5. But if you want to add those pluses up, it will give you a 4.8 out of 5. So this is a really good book overall. Either 4.6 or 4.8 is a really good score. I think much better than the Goodreads one. So you can sense that I enjoyed this book a lot more than the average person on Goodreads. And I think it is deserved. I think it's crazy how she wrote this book in 1969. And nowadays it is still so relevant. It still touches in themes that are so good to think about in this day and age. And that just shows how great Ursula K. Le Guin was as a writer. And definitely would want to read more books from her. I don't have any at the moment, but I definitely will look into it because especially I liked The Dispossessed. I liked this one. So there's no reason why I shouldn't read more. And also, just to think that this book was so short, but it had so much meat into it is just a proof of how Ursula K. Le Guin was an excellent writer. But now I think it's time for you to tell me, what do you think of this book? What do you think of other Ursula K. Le Guin books? Tell me down below, comment, and if you're new, don't forget, subscribe, like the content. You shall be seeing me on Thursdays and Sundays when I publish videos, and I'll see you soon, okay? Bye!